Okay, so in the early stages of planning, a new certification for construction professionals, the Project Management Institute, also known as PMI, approached CII about including some of our practices in related new course content. This has led to the strong collaborative partnership between CII and PMI, which is evident at this conference. PMI's dedication efforts to transform its construction professional certifications from concept to reality represent a crucial educational opportunity that promises to positively impact our entire industry. Here to tell us more about PMI's construction professional certifications and collaboration with CII to drive excellence, let's welcome Breen, who's the Global Director of Construction and Vice President at PMI.
Thank you. You're welcome. Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry about the big head that was there. I didn't put that there. I've flown in from Australia to be here today. It's a very long way. One good thing, though, is that I've heard from two people now that have told me that San Diego and Melbourne are very similar. It's a bit relaxed. It's, you know, very friendly people. So I'm very much feeling at home. So thank you. I'm here to talk to you about the partnership between PMI and CII, really focusing on driving excellence in construction. So what I wanted to do was just set the scene in terms of the state of the construction industry. So if you look at the research by McKinsey, we've gone too far. First of all, the construction industry is the largest in the world. It makes up 13% of GDP, but it really has not been performing well. So it's only been growing at about 1% per annum for the past 20 years. There is also around $70 trillion of work that needs to be done in global infrastructure investment through to 2035. And that was, I think it was exasperated during the pandemic where, in fact, a lot of governments looked at what was going on and said, we need to stimulate our economies and put some money into significant infrastructure growth, just like has happened here with the IIJA. Skilled labour shortage was another issue. So again, it's all around the world, but particularly if you're looking at the US alone, 41% of the construction workforce is expected to retire by 2031. That's a huge number. And most of the developed countries around the world are facing the same issues with baby boomers retiring and just a real issue in getting talent coming into the industry. Let's face it, unfortunately, we're not the sexiest industry. We're not attracting people from different industries at a fast rate that want to come, but there is this natural progression of people who are moving across because it's such a fast-growing and important industry. And there's a lot that we need to do to make it attractive to those people. So PMI also does our own research, and we do what's called the Pulse of the Profession, which is a survey that goes out every single year. And that found some pretty alarming numbers as well. 72% of projects end in delays, 73% of projects end over budget, and 70% experience some sort of scope creep. Now, the audience here are very much construction experts. I'm sure you can relate to these numbers. And in fact, there's probably some of you that are even thinking, I thought it might be a little bit higher. So we decided that we wanted to do something about this. You know, we can't continue with such inefficiencies in the industry. So we decided to put a task force together. We wanted this very much to be industry-led and not just PMI telling people what they should do. And so we reached out to people in the industry that I'll talk about shortly. We also partnered with LCI to bring in their expertise and CII to bring in their decades of delivering efficiency to the construction industry. So we called this the Construction Initiative that was embarked on about 3.5 to 4 years ago. I talked to you earlier about these statistics, and if you look at it from a dollar point of view, It basically showed that for every $1 billion spent on construction project, $127 million was wasted. So you need to let that sink in a little bit. That is a huge amount of money that we're wasting every single year. And so the thought process was that if we could make the industry just 5% more efficient, we're significantly impacting the planet, the world that we live in. So we put together this expert panel. You can see CII front and centre there, but there's others as well. In fact, Aramco was one of the first companies. They were a very big partner of PMI, and they came to us and said, we love the PMP, but is there something specifically in the construction industry that could be created? And that just triggered the thoughts. US Department of Energy, US Army Corps, BHP, Jacobs, and many others there. And we tried to have a representation from developers, contractors, consultants, etc., so that it was a nice, even, spread throughout the industry. So we workshopped actually for more than a year with this group of people. We wanted to understand what were the pain points in the projects that they were delivering, first of all, and agree on that. Second of all, what can we do about those pain points? How can we alleviate or even eliminate them? So of all the research that we did, these are the 7 pain points that we narrowed it down to. The first was ineffective communication. So that was actually the #1 issue that was raised up. And it could be due to a lot of different things. It could be language barriers. It could be cultural differences. It could be the fact that only 7% of communication is the actual words that we say. So that was really important. That was the first one that we needed to focus on. The next one was scope creep. Every single person that's worked on a project understands what scope creep is. It's something that happens in every single project, and unfortunately it's often decisions that are made on a project that are not necessarily and quite often not contributing to the outcome of the project or improving the project at all. Interface management was another issue, particularly on the larger projects, and we found that a lot of packages were being developed either with overlapping scope or a gap in the scope entirely. Poor design and execution, and when we dug into that, it was not necessarily about the lack of capability of the design consultants. It was more that we didn't have enough time spent on front-end planning. We didn't understand what it was we were trying to achieve, or we didn't have all of the stakeholders involved to contribute to what we should be achieving. Poor procurement, low margins. If there's contractors in the room, you know how difficult it is in a competitive bidding environment with maybe 2 or 3% markup. And unfortunately, the statistics will show us that if there are mistakes made by either the contractor or even the tender documentation, and suddenly during the project there's money that's being lost, then the tendency is for the contractors to try to claw that money back in any way possible. So it may not be the best outcome for the project. Lack of standardised performance measurement, and that's all around data. We know nowadays just how important the data is. And a lot of surveys that we've seen as well show that we are getting much better at gathering the data, but we're not even using it for anything meaningful. So we gather it and then just put it in the cupboard, don't even use it. A lack of poor innovation and technology. So again, the industry is lagging behind many of the other industries. Some of it, there's a good reason. It's not so easy to standardise everything we're doing in construction projects. But the fact is that there is a lot more that can be done to bring in the latest technology and to bring up the adoption of that as well. So they were the key pain points. We also wanted to look at this. A great thing about PMI is our community. Now, we have more than 700,000 members all around the world. We have about 1.5 million certification holders, predominantly PMP. We also have a lot of volunteers. We have chapters in each of the key cities around the world, and there's over 300 of those. And so we wanted to make sure that we could leverage off our capabilities in that area and start a construction community. And we found that when we spoke to people, particularly global organisations, that they didn't have this ability to network in this way. So we want to create the community, help each other, learn from each other, understand what the potential future risks are, network, do events such as these. PMI has some large events. In fact, we have an event every single day of the year in various cities. We have our largest event coming up soon in LA, which is the Global Summit. There's probably going to be close to 4,000 people there. And these are the sort of events that we want to leverage off with a construction community and really amplify that. We want to improve the industry, but always remember to have fun. I think that's a key. So now what I want to do is talk to you about a project called Marina Bay Sands, which is a project that I worked on in Singapore. And what I'm going to do is I'll run through a bit of a case study and also talk to you about our new PMI Construction Professional Certification that we've developed, and tell you how that course can potentially help you to alleviate some of the problems that might arise. So Marina Bay Sands, if you're a Formula One fan, you may have seen this building. The helicopters fly around this for the night race in Singapore. It's a 3-storey, 2,500 luxury hotel rooms with a huge infinity pool and the world's largest cantilever deck. It has 1.3 million square feet convention centre, 800,000 square foot of shopping malls, and I will always say that I've never stepped foot in those shops because you'd have to sell your house to be able to buy something. Ridiculous. 2 state-of-the-art theatres, an art science museum, and a very small 15,000 square foot casino. But it's actually the highest generating revenue for any casino per square foot in the world. So it's like Singapore, it's small but powerful. The Sky Park itself, which is everything on top, these are photos that I took during the project. The steel work was amazing, particularly at the cantilever side. So there was about 7,000 tonnes of steel that needed to go into that. It was pre-assembled on the ground and then it was strand-jacked into place. Each large segment took about 24 hours just to manoeuvre into the right position. On top of all of that was a 12,500 square metre garden in the sky, if you like. So there was a huge amount of trees that needed to be transplanted to the rooftop. They had to be pre-grown in a nursery for 2 years to get them used to the conditions and then hoisted in place. And that was great if we had the 8 cranes that we were originally supposed to have, but in the end we had 1. So it was tough. This is a photo that I took before the handover. I was the first person to swim in this pool. Had to do the testing and commissioning for the waterproofing. That was great. It's a famous pool though. It's a beautiful, infinity edge, 150 metres long, looking over the city skyline of Singapore. So the first issue, as I said before, the pain point was communication. So if I look back at that project, we had more than 50 stakeholders involved from all around the world. The client was the Las Vegas Sands Group. Moshi Safti was the concept architect from the US as well. We had landscape architects from around the world, contractors from Korea, engineers, etc., etc. So there was a huge amount of people involved in the project. There was no possible way that you could attend every meeting that was going on. There was changes made by the client every single day, and sometimes we didn't even know who these people were. They just had the right colour hard hat on, so we had to listen to them. Material had to be brought in from all around the world. There is no natural resources in Singapore, so the logistics of the supply chain was really intense. And we had the government who was telling us that they weren't going to get involved, that it's all handed over to the consortium to run this, $5 billion project. But of course, straight away they got involved. So we had to definitely deal with the government throughout the project on many changes that were happening. Even retrospectively, when things were installed, they would come in, they weren't happy, we had to change them. So if we then look at how can PMI-CP help you, we learn important things like active listening. And that is definitely a skill. We have 2 of these, 1 of these, we should use it in that ratio at least, but we don't. The previous presenters talked about using the big room or the Obeya methodology. We teach that throughout this course as well. Develop a strong communication plan, understand the formal governance requirement of communication, understanding the importance of stakeholder management and when to communicate and who to communicate to. We've also introduced in each of these courses elements of, that CII have developed, such as in this case the Compass diagnostic tool, helping to foster a much more collaborative way of working. The next one's on technology and innovation. So for this particular project, it was mandated that we had to use Aconex, we had to use Primavera, we had to use BIM. Now, Aconex, many of you would have used. It's essentially a web-based collaborative portal that allows us all to be in the same place, single source of truth. And it also helped, I was actually a project manager representing a contractor on a package of work. And because we were able to track everything in Aconex, including the guy that came along and gave us instructions that we didn't know who he was, that was all in Aconex, so it helped. And we did use other technologies on that particular project. Back then it was 4D BIM, now what are we up to, 7? And other things like looking at different materials. We, instead of doing a wet installation of marble in the bathrooms, we prefabricated it. The marble was a lot thinner. We installed it onto steel frames and brought it into site. So there was definitely things that were happening, but there could have been a lot more. So this particular course teaches you the importance of data, when to use it, why should we use it. Similarly with innovation, when to think outside the box. Unfortunately, in construction projects, a lot of the time, we're rushing to get things done, so it's difficult to think outside the box. But it tries to give you techniques to do that other than having a separate research and development arm. Recognise the benefits that advanced technology will bring to the industry, so whether that's in doing things faster, doing it safer, doing it in a much more efficient way or better quality. These are all things that technology can help to bring to our projects. And also understanding and recognising why people resist technology. You get old people like me that are so used to doing things a certain way that we're a bit resistant to change. So we can teach ways to clearly demonstrate to an individual how they would benefit themselves personally by adopting this technology. Because if you can do that, then you're able to spread that out and scale it to the rest of the project and hopefully the rest of the organisation and other projects that you work on. In this one, we've also introduced the lever technology prediction tool as well, and other methodologies there. And this is the photo that I took the first day that we were given access to the site. And I was just walking to the edge of the building thinking that there must be another small drop. There was no handrails, and I literally went like that. Oh, okay, I'm going to step back from that. Nowadays, you would just send the drone up and you would take some pictures and say, we are not going up there. And the last one I wanted to concentrate on was contract and risk management. We spent 12 months, it was actually more like 18 months in the planning stages. We had thousands of drawings done, everything was integrated, and when we did get to site, everything was wrong. It all changed. So we had to scramble to try to work out a way to get this done. We also realised that the many packages that we were interacting with had different forms of contract use, which was quite unusual. Materials, as I said, coming in from all around the world, multiple change orders, everything had to be captured on Aconex. So for contract and risk management, the course at PMI-CP talks about understanding risk management. So we, at the time, did extensive risk management on that project. We had all of the stakeholders involved. We could identify what their potential pain points are and how likely that risk was going to occur, and really map that process. So even though everything had changed when we got to the site, we had contingency plans in place. You need to understand the different delivery methods, so not only just for that project, but if you're running a project, if you're a developer, for example, and you want to know the best forms of contract to use, we saw some of the different forms in the previous one as well, then this teaches you very clearly what's the best to use in each circumstance. Understanding the common causes of claims. They will come up. First of all, we teach you how to try to prevent them. Second of all, to minimise the impact. And then last case is understanding the dispute resolution processes. For CII, we use the common risk mitigation treatment here as well, which significantly, the feedback we get from people who are taking the course is overwhelmingly positive. And hopefully, at the end of the day, you have a wonderful project that you can get up on stage and talk about 15 years later. So, what I'd like to cover in the last few minutes is what is the actual course that we've developed. So this is the first and the core courses that we have. So 4 courses covering communication, scope and change order management, interface management, and contract and risk. At the end of those 4, you can then take an exam. So if anyone here is familiar with the PMP, it's a very similar process to that. Roughly a 4-hour exam that you would take, and you will become certified in the PMI Construction Professional. If you wish to go on and do further learning, you can do the Senior Construction Professional, which brings in performance and materials management techniques, construction technology and innovation, and construction execution planning. And the whole idea is we wanted to build these 7 courses initially, and then add any modules, if you like, that people come to us and say this would be something we'd like to add. So it could be focused on sustainability, for example. Or in this case, in fact, we've just released another course which is capitalising on the new trends in construction technology from Oracle. So we've partnered with Oracle on that. It's called Digital Construction Practitioner. So we've had early success. The courses have been released progressively in the last 2 to 3 years. The certification itself was only released last year, so it's relatively new. And you can see here from the map that it's really spreading significantly all around the world, which we're very proud of, particularly in North America, that's where we first launched the courses. And I think importantly, you need to look at this and say, how can it help you? Or how can it help your organisation? So first of all, it is a world-class certification built by the industry. It's always very important to notice that. And it's really setting new standards for global construction project management. Its main aim is to improve the efficiency, the profitability, and the sustainability of the industry. It's a clear commitment by an employer to their employees that you're investing in their future. You're putting them through these courses, and you're looking at their career journey. And that very much goes to attracting and retaining talent, which is one of the top issues that we hear from organisations. It's an independent affirmation of an individual's skills And unfortunately, the industry is in quite a poor state in some examples because people are simply not trained, they're not skilled enough to deliver the projects that they're put in charge of. And lastly, it allows you to make a difference to the world we live in. And we mean that. The construction industry is one of the biggest contributors to carbon emissions globally, and if we're able to make it more efficient, it literally is helping to save the planet. So thank you. I wanted to let you know that for this particular conference, we do have a discount code for our course, if that's something you'd like to take a look at. We also have a booth downstairs, and the team would be more than happy to discuss with you in more detail. So thank you very much. Do you have any questions?
You do have quite a few questions. All right, so we do have a question. Who was invoked in the content development for the CP and SCP certification courses?
Who was involved?
Yes.
So that slide that I showed that had various people from some developers, contractors, consultants, etc., that expert panel were the ones that we workshopped with for over a year to develop the content. We then went out to every course that we do, we have volunteers, and the volunteers will go through the course content, they will give feedback. It's a very extensive process, but that's how we did it.
Okay. One more question we have. What CII best practices did you implement in your case study?
So actually, there is a lot of case studies used throughout the project. We've tried to make it as practical as possible. So in all of the 7 courses, you will see that there's so many case studies and examples, I can't pinpoint it. There are extensively throughout the 7 courses, the CII methodologies are talked about in detail, and there are many other case studies from other global, either mostly I would say private enterprise, but also some government institutions as well.
Okay. Well, now questions are flying in, but we have one more.
1 minute.
I was just going to say we have a minute. So the last question for you, how can AWP be integrated into the PMI-CP certification?
So it already is. Again, it's quite extensively used throughout the courses, and it's something that, to be honest, living in the southern hemisphere, AWP is not something that was extensively used unless perhaps in the oil and gas industries. And when I was reviewing that together as we were building the course, I was blown away by how powerful it was. So we have actually really amplified that throughout the 7 courses.